yeah, like the guys that I work with, they come from such a broad spectrum of our community,
Yeah.
but ultimately there's common themes around like feeling really disenfranchised by the grinder scene, the hookup culture, feeling like they have so much depth in their own heart that they want to share with another person or people. And yeah, I guess feeling a bit lost and disenfranchised by the gay world, right? Like there doesn't seem to be room in the queer world for men who are interested in some form of relationship that is deep, that does go to that like soul level, and that is much more juicy than perhaps a fleeting grinder experience.
Yeah.
So
Relatable,
I think there's a
relatable,
lot of room
relatable.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
totally.
basically my journey. I mean, I was pretty much single other than, very short-term things for most of my life until I met my partner that I've been with for 2.5 years now. But before that, I definitely can relate to that grinder culture, that feeling of like, you want to go and meet someone, you want to connect with people, but every person you meet just doesn't feel like that they are able to or want to go there. And then you start to kind of put that on yourself and go, is there something wrong with me? Or, well, that was my journey. I was like, what's wrong with me that people don't want to get to know the real me? But then as you evolve, as you go through your own journey, you realize it's actually got to do with most of these other people, or that you don't really know how to get to a place where you can actually connect to the right kinds of people as well. Welcome to the Queer Quest podcast, your beacon of light and sprinkle of glitter in the queer community. I'm your host, Cristiano Green, CEO and founder of Queer Quest and a transformation coach for queer individuals. And together, we're embarking on a journey of transformation. Each week, we bring you a new training topic or connect you with visionary queer leaders in healing and coaching, diving deep into conversations that inspire growth, celebrate diversity, and empower you to live authentically. So wherever you are, settle in and let's get ready to unlock the vibrant potential within. This is where your quest begins. Hello, you fabulous souls, and welcome to this week's episode of the Queer Quest podcast. I'm your host, Cristiano Green, and this week on the podcast, we have a special guest in the house, Andreas. Andreas is a embodiment sexuality coach for gay, bi, and queer men. Welcome, Andreas. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. What a fun intro.
Yeah, I love to introduce people with a bit of pizzazz because we are queer after all.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So maybe let's kind of jump in and start by you're an embodiment sexuality coach. Now, I mean, I could probably understand what that is, but there's probably some people out there who don't really understand it. Do you want to explain for the children out there, what is it that you do and what do you help the queer men out there doing?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this idea of like embodied sexuality, like what does that even mean, right? I think in essence, if I was to just like really distill it down, I help all men who love men, and however that spectrum manifests, to come into a form of sexual empowerment where essentially they're having the sex, romance, and intimate life that feels really deeply connected into their like soul, not just their physical body, but their soul as well.
I love that. And so then would you find that there are a lot of men out there that struggle on that journey?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I mean, I definitely struggled with that like for such a long time. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm in the work now is it's like my own healing journey, journeying things like sacred sexuality and yoga and tantra. I kind of had this like self-growth, self-healing journey, which impacted me so profoundly and continues to do so that it kind of just like naturally morphed into what I do now. And so, yeah, like the guys that I work with, they come from such a broad spectrum of our community,
Yeah.
but ultimately there's common themes around like feeling really disenfranchised by the grinder scene, the hookup culture, feeling like they have so much depth in their own heart that they want to share with another person or people. And yeah, I guess feeling a bit lost and disenfranchised by the gay world, right? Like there doesn't seem to be room in the queer world for men who are interested in some form of relationship that is deep, that does go to that like soul level, and that is much more juicy than perhaps a fleeting Grindr experience.
Yeah,
So
relatable,
I think there's a
relatable,
lot of room
relatable.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
totally.
basically my journey. I mean, I was pretty much single other than, very short-term things for most of my life until I met my partner that I've been with for 2.5 years now. But before that, I definitely can relate to that grinder culture, that feeling of like, you want to go and meet someone, you want to connect with people, but every person you meet just doesn't feel like that they are able to or want to go there. And then you start to kind of put that on yourself and go, is there something wrong with me? Or, well, that was my journey of like, what's wrong with me that people don't want to get to know the real me? But then as you evolve, as you go through your own journey, you realize it's actually got to do with most of these other people, or that you don't really know how to get to a place where you can actually connect to the right kinds of people as well.
Yes, like both of those, what you were sharing there, I think both of those are true in that, I mean, the two pieces that you spoke to was like the cultural narrative that we have, and which I would love to talk about. And then there's
Brilliant.
more of that kind of like emotional or inner capacity to create the relationships that you desire. And I would love to talk about that too, actually.
And we're going to get into both of those things because those are some of the stuff that I think is really important for us to share, especially with the people listening today. But I'd love to hear a bit about your journey. As you said that, of course, it shaped why you do what you do. Let's talk a little bit about you growing up. I guess maybe relating to your sexuality, as a gay or queer person, and also then, because that's one journey, but also I guess going to a deeper level of sex as well, and that's a different journey as well. So feel like sharing, what feels right for you in the moment.
Yeah, thank you. I grew up in the snowy mountains area of Australia, which is kind of, if anyone knows Australian geography, it's like near Canberra, kind of the capital. Anyway, long story short, it's a small country town, a lot of
Yeah.
small regional rural type environments. And it was really hard, like I grew up as a chubby kid who was really self-conscious about his body and was really bad at sport and felt like I was kind of just like a loser. And then you add on top of that being gay in the environment that I grew up in, it's just like it was really hard. It was really challenging. And I feel like many, many queer people do, I shut my sexuality down. I tried to deny it. And it essentially became like this nasty ball, this mess of like shame, guilt, internalized homophobia, like just all of
Mm.
this like pain and suffering. So as a teenager, I discovered yoga, and I wish I could say that was on some quest for like spiritual enlightenment, but it really wasn't. It was because, like I said, I was a chubby kid and I was like, I'm gonna do Pilates, I'm gonna do P90X, I'm gonna do Michelle Bridges, like I'm gonna do everything I can. And
Because I want to look
I've,
fit. I want to be a young, hot, sexy gay person.
yeah, like 15, like you don't have that kind of higher level thinking where you're like, oh, hang on, like maybe I need to work on my self-image deeper than just the skin, right?
Of course.
Anyway, I'm really grateful that did happen
Of
because
course.
yoga really stuck for me. And what started off as this like weight loss thing actually became a spiritual thing. Like it became a self-growth and development tool. And I followed yoga for a very long time, became a yoga teacher, quit my job so that I could teach, yoga teaching full time. I was a public servant. Like I had the cushy cubicle job, and
Yeah.
I just chucked it in the bin because I just knew it wasn't aligned to me, and the way that I wanted to support other people. So yoga was a huge piece. My work is unapologetically quite spiritually based.
Yeah.
Um, my work in embodiment, it includes like somatic work, it includes spiritual work, it includes tantra, like yoga, all of that kind of encompasses the body of work and the offerings. But I reached an interesting turning point with yoga where I started to learn more and more about sexuality within yoga and how yoga sees sexuality. And there's this concept in yoga called brahmacharya, which is all about like, the way I would interpret that is like treat your sex energy as God energy or as like spirit energy, however you want to relate to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it really screwed me over. Like I was kind of distraught by that teaching because it was very like heteronormative. It was very much like sex is bad. Like it was almost like that. And yeah, it really created a fracture between my sex and spirit. So I felt very distraught. And I was this love and light yoga teacher who was like going into classes and teaching people how to like, find God. And I use God as a general term to mean spirit, source, higher consciousness.
Yeah.
And I was addicted to online camming and felt super shameful about that and was
Mm.
too scared to show myself to real men because I had all of these feelings of guilt and shame. And yoga exacerbated that. So, to try and make a longer story short, I moved down the path of Tantra, which, has a little bit more room for exploring sexuality within that kind of same lineage of
Yeah.
yoga, not the
Yeah.
same,
Yeah.
but like adjacent. And so I started exploring Tantra to start looking at that shame. And that led me down the path of sacred sexuality, being certified with an Australian-based intimacy school, and eventually into where we are now.
Oh, wow. And I think that's pretty relatable in a sense of like, almost living like a double life of like going out there and teaching this, this yoga, which is supposed to be so zen and supposed to be so spiritual, but then having the on this what you would call as dark and sordid other side of you that's online camming, which, for for us today, you're probably thinking, that's silly that I thought that way, because there's nothing wrong with people expressing themselves however they want to, because we are multifaceted human beings. But I can understand and think that it's relatable for a lot of queer people to have, that double side of us, and feel the shame of that, because we're brought up also as queer people to feel shame for part of our gender or our sexuality anyway, right?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that like what this healing journey was like, how do I get rid of this behavior that I don't feel comfortable with? Like, how do I stop doing this online camming thing? And eventually, through my own healing journey, the realization was, hang on, I need to change my own relationship to online camming, as it were, to liberate my sexuality, because it's not so much about the act, it's
Correct.
about your intention and how you see the act. And, for me, that was this shameful, secret, dark thing. But, I could take the exact same act now, camming, and make that the most liberated, empowering, self-growth thing because I've changed my own relationship to it. So I think you totally hit the nail on the head with that journey. And that took years, it
Of
wasn't
course.
overnight, no way.
Never going to be an overnight journey, overcoming shame. Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
So then, talking about the topic of shame, because I'm assuming that so many of the men that would come to you would feel a lot of shame around their sexuality or their desire for sex, because again, they're separate things, but they can also be so intertwined, because sex and sexuality, they're very similar, meanings of what the word is, I guess. But like there one's more spiritual, like this is who you are, and one is more, I guess, an intimate thing, that an action that you take. But again, it can also and should be a spiritual thing as well. So let's have a little bit of a discussion around how you see that, and talk about maybe some of the struggles that you went through, but also some of the men that come through to you deal with as well.
Mm. Yeah, it's so nuanced, but what's really coming up for me to share in response to that is that often I feel, especially with the men who come towards me, and I definitely felt this too, was that like there's this kind of there's this like superficial layer of sex and intimacy, which the I'm gonna say the word gay world because I can't really speak to say like women who love
Yeah,
women or like
totally.
those experiences. But from what I see in the men who love men space, which is where I work,
Yeah.
um, that there's this like almost what I would say like the top of the well, this like skim the top of the well. And this is where we have Grindr and we have these like really like adrenaline based, like sexual.
Dopamine things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the dopamine thing. That's it, right? It's like, I feel lonely. I'm going to have a quick fix tonight and feel guilty about it later. Like, just that sort of like fast food sex hamster wheel that we as as a as a culture
Yeah.
seemingly seem to perpetuate, right? And and there's so much more available to us. And from what I've seen and what the men who come to me, they're the ones that like, they're like, I'm over it. I want more. Like, I feel unsatisfied by just going into that top band. I want people to see me. You know, this is coming back to that, like the soul piece.
Yeah.
And um often I think I question like what stops people, what stops us from going into that? Why as a society are we, as a culture, like staying up in that grinder band as the mainstream? And I think there's multiple reasons for that, but one of those reasons could very much be self-protection and this lack of vulnerability uh, that seems to present itself because we've grown up feeling unsafe, like we can't be ourselves, like we have to be hyper vigilant, that we have to defend our very existence, which can then make us defensive in return. Um, and so there's this like, I need to protect who I am, and I'm only willing to show so much. And then that stops us from opening up to the people that are the people that we really want to. Like it's really commonplace to have a funny, kinky conversation about sex,
Yeah.
and probably less common to have a conversation with your gay friends about like your true and intimate, deep desires within that same sex and intimacy space. And
Or your fears and insecurities about ever finding that for yourself, because maybe you struggled with it as well, because you don't want to say, oh my God, I feel so alone and I'm afraid I'm not going to meet someone because I struggle with that. And so, I'm trying to get what I can get at this point because I'm looking for love. And the only way I feel I can get some sort of that is through this hookup world, this hookup culture that is so adamant in the men who love men space, right?
yeah, and that can create a lot of shame for people because
Totally.
they it's almost like I don't have any other option, right? It's like I want to, like you said it so beautifully, I want love. And maybe that doesn't have to mean like a marriage, or it
Correct. It
could.
doesn't have to mean love is different between every single person that it is between.
Yeah. And yet there seems to be this like collective fear around it. It's like, no, don't go into that. Like keep it in the sex space. Don't let the love come in too much, because all of a sudden then I'm risking things. I'm vulnerable. It's bringing up my shit. Like, and so this desire that there's so many men who love men seem to have, which is to have that loving, deep experience. It feels unmet. It's like, well, I can, if I want anything, I have to go on Grindr, I guess. And then I feel shameful about that because that fleeting experience didn't meet what I really wanted. So now I feel like torn. And it kind of creates this like self-perpetuating cycle of like crappiness. So yeah, I think like that to me is such a juicy place, because it's like there is so much room to liberate that space. And the great irony actually is that so many men come to me being like, that's what I want, right? They're like, I want that love. And so I'm like, all of these men are saying they want this love. Why then does it feel like no one else wants it? Because we're just not sharing
Mm.
our truth. We're not communicating it. We're not being vulnerable about it.
We're afraid to share that side of ourselves and say it again because we feel like we have to put on that front, because growing up as gay men, we're talking to gay men right now, the whole queer community can relate to this, but you know, we grow up in a place where we feel like we have to be perfect to almost hide for the fact that we are gay, especially when we're in the closet, because we are trying to be the perfect student, the perfect son, the perfect friend in all these ways. So that, like I said, people don't see, oh, like, or think anything about us that could be the thing that we dread that they think the most, which is that we were gay. Right.
Mm.
So we try to be perfect. And the repercussions of that down the track is that even when we come out, we still feel the desire to be perfect, because in the gay world, there's still this notion of, for you to find that love, you have to have the perfect body, you have to have the perfect career, you have to be perfect in every way to find that. So if you don't have it, you feel almost unworthy of it being there for you, which then holds you from even sharing that to other people, because you say it out loud, then maybe that is true, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, 100%. And it's like, it's the perpetual overachieving for love and validation, you know. And I did it too. Like, God, when you say the perfect student, that was me. I was like, if I'm not sporty, then you bet I'm gonna be the bloody like ducks of my school. I'm gonna like top the grade, you know. It was totally that. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think we don't, a lot of us who don't, you know, do the work, whether it's the therapy, the coaching, or whatever, we don't get out of that. We just keep perpetuating that as adults and just continue to strive to overachieve, so that, yeah, like you said, that we can find a reason to be loved.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on like people who are in this space feeling this kinds of way and their usage of, say, porn? Because I find
Mm.
that, you know, in the gay world, almost, you know, I would say that almost every single gay person would have some exploration and journey with porn, because almost that might be their first way of exploring these feelings
Mm.
that they're having. What do you see in your space when it comes to people using porn and that holding them back from maybe even, like I said, allowing themselves to be vulnerable to finding love and owning their sexuality?
It's so interesting. I literally just prepared a PowerPoint presentation about this today for my group container. So it's like front of mind. Um, I'll try not to make it too like esoteric, because I often talk in the language of like energetics, chakras, you know, energy centers. I think the first piece, you know, and this is coming from a personal perspective as well as my perspective as a sacred sexuality and embodiment coach,
Yeah.
is that porn isn't bad. And I think that I really don't want anyone to listening to this to think that if they're utilizing pornography, that that's a bad thing to do. And I would suggest that porn can kind of only take you to a certain place within your sexuality and your sex experience. So, you know, if coming back to that well metaphor, as in like, if you have this beautiful deep well with all kinds of beautiful, sexy, yummy experiences that your sexuality has to offer you, as well as deeply soul-fulfilling experiences, then like porn is like, it's like tonguing the top rim. It's like, you know, you're just like lapping the surface of what could be, if what is in your sexual energy. And so with porn use, it's like, sure, use porn, see it for what it is, and know that if you were to move beyond the kind of dependency around it, to access your own sexual energy, to access your desire, all of that stuff, then there is so much more available to you in terms of like depth of connection, pleasure, um, orgasmic experiences, and if it resonates with you, deeply spiritual and soul fulfilling experience as well, that your sex most definitely can connect you into. So I hope that answered the question. I don't know.
No, no, I think you've definitely shared with that as well. Because I what I sense and why I ask the questions, because I find from my own experience and also from a lot of people who also come to me, is that, you know, the ones who are really looking for love, who are really looking for relationships, can sometimes get dependent on porn as a way to deal with some of that loneliness. So because what it does is it obviously really alters. It's a mood changer. It releases dopamine, so it's easy for you to get into a hole of like, okay, maybe I'm not going to get what I want, so I'm going to go out there and just allow myself to go into all these fantasies and see that there and settle for that. Now, I'm not saying this for every person, because I also don't agree that porn is inherently bad, and everyone gets to choose that for themselves. I guess why I wanted to have that conversation was because I sensed that a lot of people do use it as a way to so they don't have to be vulnerable, so they don't have to put themselves out there to get the intimacy and the connection, that maybe that's what they're really truly longing for.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, big time. You know, like, and when you put your because your sexual energy is powerful shit, right? Like, sex energy is creation energy.
Yeah.
You are born with it, quite literally. And so the amount of like juju, the amount of like energy within your sex energy is huge. And so, you know, if you're constantly spending your focus attention on pornography, presumably you're ejaculating during that experience, a lot of your energy is simply being focused and spent on that,
Yeah.
rather than using that same energy, that desire, that horniness that is inside of you that's making you reach out for whatever the tube is.
Yeah.
Like, that same energy can direct you into that vulnerability and into the experiences that you want to have. And you're so right. Like, often one of the stickiest points my one-on-one clients go through with me is like, when I start asking them to show up, to be vulnerable, to put themselves out there, to like go to physical spaces, to join a meetup. Like, these are the amount of pushback on that. It's like, no, I can't be vulnerable. I can't be seen. I can't be. And yet it's so clear that that's what's stopping them from meeting those people, is not having that I guess willingness to be uncomfortable in the vulnerability of being seen.
Yeah. Because it's like that backup thing that they've got with the porn. It's like, oh, I can sort myself out in a sense, you know? And maybe they feel
Yeah,
connected
and you
to it.
totally
And it
can.
becomes, yeah. And for some people, it can turn into an addiction, which really, when we talk about these kinds of addictions, it's the belief that, one, maybe you're not deserving of having what you want, or that you don't believe you can find it. So you always have this use of this thing here to maybe numb yourself from either those negative feelings, and then enhance yourself by changing the mood, getting the dopamine hit that you need, and then, you know, allowing that to settle for the next 24 hours, because most people who do get into that will probably use it on a more regular basis. And that's when I see it as a problem when I speak to the clients out there, is the ones that are using it every day are the ones that are probably in need of looking at the reasons why they're doing that deeper level.
Yeah,
It's often
100%.
avoidance, you know.
Yeah, like yeah, it's usually, I mean, because that's, you're speaking to, I mean, the line between porn dependency and porn addiction is very fuzzy, right? Like, we don't,
100%. And the
because
only
there are
person
certain
can define it
times,
is
like,
that person themselves. I can't tell anybody that they have this or that. It's only you that can really understand that. So that's why it's so fuzzy. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a problem when you feel like it's controlling you, or when you feel like your sexual desire is running the show for you, right? When you are at the mercy of your urges, that is when that's when it's like, okay, we need to, like you said, pull it back and look at, like, what are you avoiding here? What is this, like, what is this distracting you from? What feelings are you avoiding from this, or perhaps like getting from it? But the way I work is like, the coaching is like a talk thing, but it's a body thing, right? Hence
Yeah.
embodiment. And so it's like somatic processing, like, of the body. And like, such a big piece around reprogramming porn dependency is getting people back into feeling your own body, like, because if we take porn as the example,
Mm.
the focus is beyond, it's outside of us. The focus is on the screen, right? And so we're not connected to our genitals, we're not connected to our heart, we're not connected to our breath, our body. And because of this disconnection to ourself, that's creating the cycle of being trapped in it, because we're not letting our sexual energy like liberate us. We're not letting ourselves feel it fully, and this is, once again, this is like I'm licking the top of the well because no focus is on us. Think about it this way. Like, if you were to have a really great sexual encounter with another person, I'm talking about, wouldn't you want them to like breathe with you? Wouldn't you want them to feel your whole body? Wouldn't you want them to like really like pay attention and like go through the nooks and crannies and feel all the different textures of your body? Or do you just want them to like
Balance
arbitrarily?
you out and be gone. Yeah, use you as a
Yeah,
as a cum bucket or whatever.
right. So it's like, what, like, sure, one of those things could be kinky for a moment, but
Correct.
like, what is gonna deeply fulfill you? And I would say that for the vast majority of people, it's probably that they're looking for that extra yummy experience. And it's the same with self-pleasure and masturbation. If all you're accessing is bang me now, baby, then you're robbing yourself of that experience to like connect to your own body in that deep, intimate way. Because the way you love yourself, and I'm talking about sexually, the way that you love yourself is most certainly how you're going to play and attract into the world around you. So sex is magic, without going all off on a tangent. You can use your sexual energy to completely empower yourself and transform your life. It is an incredible tool that is inherently accessible to you.
Ah, I love that. There should be a mic drop at the end of that. And we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be right back with Andreas with this really cool conversation that we're having.
In a world where every journey is unique, one path shines brightly for the queer community. Introducing QueerQuest, the first of its kind personal development platform designed exclusively for us, by us. At QueerQuest, we understand the multifaceted journey of queer identity. That's why we've created a space where you can explore, learn, and grow with the guidance of queer experts from around the globe. Whether you're seeking to enhance your physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual well-being, QueerQuest is your gateway to transformation. Imagine embarking on quests tailored to your journey of self-discovery, finding community, and unlocking your queer excellence. QueerQuest offers online courses, coaching programs, and soon workshops, seminars, retreats, and festivals, all designed to empower you to live your best life. Ready to start your adventure? Join us at www.queerquest.vip to become part of a movement towards personal and collective greatness. Sign up today to join the waitlist and be the first to know when we launch. QueerQuest, where your journey of self-discovery and transformation begins. Don't just dream of a life filled with pride and purpose, make it your reality with QueerQuest. Visit www.queerquest.vip now. Your quest awaits.
All right, we are back with Andreas, and we've been having a really cool conversation today. And I really think I'd love to steer the conversation in the area of we were just talking about it. How do people get further and better in touch with their bodies and do that in a way that it can help them enhance themselves so that they can connect better sexually and meet people and become vulnerable as well?
Yeah, epic question. And you know what? It's actually quite simple, and it usually involves taking things away. So in our world, it's no secret that we're completely distracted by technology. And often, if we were talking about porn before the break, like
Yes.
usually there's some sort of pull into like something else that is not us, that is not our body. Um, and so I really, really encourage people, if they do want to start to reconnect into their body, reconnect into their genitals, into their desire, into, well, what do I want, And it definitely starts with setting an intentional space for yourself. I think you can't underestimate the power of a ritual that we as human beings love. That's why we go through rituals. of all kinds, whether it's like marriages, whether it's birthdays, whether it's songs, like there's so many rituals because they put us into a headspace. And I think like setting a ritual like as simple as, okay, I'm going to take 10 minutes to be with my body and self-pleasure, masturbate. This time around, instead of looking at my phone, I'm going to put a timer on my phone for 10 minutes and put my phone away. And maybe I'll even put on some music as well.
Yeah.
Right. So that in itself creates a ritual. I'm a firm believer in setting a time, because then that means that rather than making, if we're talking with men who love men, that doesn't make like some sort of peak ejaculation experience like the end. Instead, you set a timer and that creates the parameters of the exploration. And that in itself just immediately changes the goal, right? It changes the way you're relating to the experience. I'm not trying to get to the finish line. Instead, you're trying to get into connection with your body, however that manifests. So number one is set a container and, an intentional space to be with your body. And then it's really simple. It's like, use your breath, use sound, use touch, and use movement to explore the landscape of your body. So everyone listening to this knows all about touch, because that's the most obvious way that we connect to our body. We touch our body.
Yeah.
Sound is one of those things where people are like either really for it or they're really like not for it.
This is where you're talking about the people who that kind of stuff like that, or something different?
I mean, like in the bedroom, actually, like, some people love to,
even like the moaning and the groaning and things like that.
Yeah, I'm talking about the oohs and the ahs and the mms, because the body knows that language. We, as humans, our mind has this like conditioning around it, like, oh, it's so like uncool and not good to like make sound. Oh, I need to masturbate in silence when I'm 13 so I don't make noise now. Like all of these little things and hang-ups we have about sound. And what's interesting is often people who are fine making sound in a sexual experience don't make a peep during masturbation. It's just masturbating in pure silence. So exploring sound can be an incredible way to access deeper states of pleasure and connection to your body. So we've got touch, we've got sound, and then the other one is breath. This is just like being in touch with your breath. You don't have to do all kinds of yogic breath work. You don't have to be Wim Hof to like do this work. It's just like breathe, man. Like feel your breath in your belly, feel your breath in your genitals, like let your breath be part of the experience. Panting is very sexy. Let's just say it that way. Panting is very sexy. There's a whole reason for that, but we won't go there.
You can if you want to tell us.
Okay, so you can use, without going into the advanced, like you can use breath to change your state of being. So, I mean, we know, if you know of Wim Hof, if you know of yogic breath work, if you've heard of holotropic breath work or whatever the breath work is, these are all ways that we use breath to change our mood, our mindset, our physical experience in the body, and often quite quickly as well. So panting is like an example, like, hot, heavy, short, sharp breaths. That is an example of like what I would call an up-regulating breath. So what it does is it kind of heightens your sensory experience. It puts you in this like, ooh, like I'm alert, I'm here, I'm like reaching orgasm type thing.
Gotcha.
So you can use your breath as a tool in that way. Also, we have the other side of that, which is down-regulating breath. This is like your long exhales. This is like your yoga calm. And we use that to enter states of bliss, calm, relaxation. And so similarly, you can explore just curiously and with fun your breath. You could literally do a whole 10 minutes just playing with breath, pulling it up and down and seeing how it feels in your body. So breath is another tool. And then of course we have movement as well. So movement is like, it's move your body, like shake it around, shake your hips around, like be on all fours, be on your back, be standing, you know, like often, especially when it comes to masturbation, if we come back to the porn piece, we're looking at a screen, we're sitting on a bed, we're like, or on a chair, and it's very fixed, you know. Imagine if you were having sex in one spot and you didn't move the entire time. Like, that wouldn't happen. Like in a sexual encounter, you're moving around. You probably change shapes, right? And so I'd encourage that within self-pleasure as well, because that helps us to move our energy around and not just be fixated. So essentially, it's like using all your sensory experiences to connect to your body intimately. So we've talked about breath, movement, sound, and touch. They're kind of always the big four.
Yeah.
But there's taste, there's smell, you know, like God, how raunchy if you smell your own armpit. Like that's a taboo in itself that you could break.
Tasting it, yeah, tasting your own sweat, I guess, yeah.
Literally, right? It's like, and you know, maybe someone listening to that goes, well, like that's so edgy, right? And I would say if you listen to that and go, oh my God, no, you have somewhere to grow into. You know, that's an edge for you that you can meet yourself in.
I love it. And I think that's great for the listeners to figure out how they can start to get more in touch with their body. What do you say to those out there who struggle with their view of their own body? They don't like their body, they struggle with it, whatever way that is, because as we know in our community, especially, you know, for a lot of gay men struggle with body image issues. So how does that come into play in what you do and how people see themselves and sex and sexuality?
Yeah, and I wish there was just like a quick answer, one size fits all approach, but of course, and you would know this too.
We're all multifaceted human beings. We're multiplex, multiple amounts of problems in life.
Yeah, and we all come with different baggage, different life experience, different trauma, different parents, like all kinds of things. And I mean, I can speak to the approach I use, and
share with that. I guess with the guys that come to you, how often is it that you would find that as well, like the people that struggle with how they see their body, and that's holding them back from the sexuality and the intimacy and getting close and building relationships and having these experiences and being in their body as well?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably somewhere up there, like 80% of the time.
And that's literally the numbers that when we look at the numbers, 80% of gay men struggle with their body. So
are they the stats?
That's actually a statistic. So yeah, there you go.
Okay, right. Yeah. I mean, it totally lives up to the lived experience. And there's a couple of different methods that I use. And the first one is what I've just spoken about, which is connect to the landscape of your own body. Because when you do that, you can listen to your body, you know, you can develop a connection with it that is more than just skin deep. So that's really important. Because if our relationship to our body is only skin deep, then we're only going to keep looking at the skin. Correct. You know, so that's one piece. A thing that I love to do, I guess you could call this exposure therapy. Like it's not like, but I mean, not like it's not like I don't know. There's no science around it, or maybe there is, but essentially, like I say it's exposure therapy because it's like go to a nude yoga class in your local area if there is one, or go to a nude beach, or even just look at yourself in the mirror for more than just a fleeting moment when you get out of the shower, right? So like I prescribe people mirror work, which is literally touch your body in front of a mirror, because that is in itself can be a really confronting, yes, and empowering thing, because you start to break down all of that negative self-talk. So yeah, the exposure therapy can be really good. I teach men's nude yoga in Canberra, but you'd be surprised at like how many, whether they're local experiences if you're in a big city or online experiences, you can just Google, and There's like mixed nude yoga for like all genders. There's men's nude yoga if that's what resonates with you. There's women's, whatever feels right for you. Online, there's definitely going to be something you could choose. And the reason I recommend that is because you're going to be in a very safe space with people who are also naked. And there's something magical that happens when you get out of your own head and you just be in the world with other nude people who are as vulnerable as you are being in that moment. It's very humanizing in a good way.
I can imagine. So what would you say that you see as different for people? Like you said, you run these on a regular basis. What do you find? Like, do you find that because you're, like I said, you're completely vulnerable with how you look, that people become more vulnerable and connect easier to other people? Like, what would you say are some of the things that that happen from those experiences?
I wrote a blog post about this on my website around like my first time going into a yoga class, so people can read that. But if I can speak to like what I see from the students that come into my class is like, well, I teach a men's class. So the biggest thing people freak out about is, what if I get hard? What if I get hard? Like, and I know people would be thinking that. The short and sharp answer is, if you do get hard, it really doesn't matter because it's a safe nude space and we expect you to be in your body as it is. There's no rule about not getting hard. And because it's a yoga class, we're moving our body, we're focusing on downward facing dog and stuff. So chances are you're probably not going to be hard for very long because your focus is going to be like, oh shit, what am I doing now?
You're not
so
it's almost like even though you're naked and everyone else is around you naked, you're still focused on the actual real reason you're here, which was the yoga, you know?
yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, it can be a sensual experience because you're naked and you're moving your body, but it's, at least in my class, it's not a sexualized experience. Like, it really is what's on the box. Yoga done nakedly, done naked, right?
Yeah. It's not what some people might think is a fantasy from going to to one of these classes.
Right. And maybe like
It's
maybe
not with you
if
you searched on Pornhub naked yoga. It's not
right.
that.
Yeah, like come to my tantra workshops or my retreats if you want that experience.
Well,
Anyway, the
talking
point.
about that, feel free to share a bit about what you do
Well,
there, add
yeah,
some of those there if you'd like. I'd love to. I'm sure people want to hear like how they can connect with you and some of this stuff, because you do run retreats, right?
yeah, I do. I run retreats at the moment. They're in Australia, so they're Australian based, but I'm most certainly looking at expanding that. I mean, God, I would love to run a retreat in Bali.
That'd be cool.
So who knows? But like, I would love to run retreats internationally. For the moment, they're in Australia. The next one is in March. It's sold out, and I'm still planning the next after that. So, you know, if anyone wants to connect to me, I'm sure at the end I can give my details. But you know, you asked the question around what do I see when people come into these spaces and how that like aids in their connection.
Yes.
And I think that the retreats are such a beautiful example of this because, you know, you have complete strangers coming into this space, and my retreats usually go for like 3 days. The next one's going to be 4 days. So it's only 4 days in your life, and yet along that journey of the retreat, at some point we get naked, and it's a very intentional space to do that, and like we run a ritual around it and we build that safety in. And then if I'm going into these tantric or sacred sexuality retreats, like slowly but surely we're upping the intimacy, we're upping the vulnerability. Yes, it does get intimate and can get sexual. You know, it is not a gangbang on yoga mats, just putting that out there. It's grounded in spirituality, yoga,
Healing.
and all of that. But it's erotic, it's intimate. And I mean, I'm just thinking of one guy in particular who is actually coming back to this retreat, and he came to a previous retreat last year, and he was most definitely the most terrified out of all the guys. Like, he was like, yeah, I'm like, I don't get naked ever, like, kind of thing, right? Like, I'm petrified to be naked with the lights off, let alone in a room full of 15 other naked strangers.
Yeah.
So it's that gentle exposure therapy of just being in a safe space, and you're literally able to go, oh, I'm here naked and it's like, okay. Oh, and the men, in this case, the men around me, the people around me, they don't have perfect Adonis bodies. They're not, it's like, oh, the reality of naked people, which is not social media, which is not like the idealized version of bodies, but rather the
Well,
real
the
version of.
social media, the porn world, like I said, if that's what your view of the gay experience is, then it's quite unrealistic, right?
Yeah, or even if you go to the club during gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, Sydney Mardi Gras, right? Like, even if you go to the club during that, it's no secret that half of those people in the club wearing a harness covered in glitter have been working on their abs for like 6 months prior just to come to that club night, right? And
True.
I think people can often walk into those experiences and be like, oh my God, look at all of these amazing young people. I'm not that. And but they represent like one subset of the whole scope of bodies within
Correct.
the queer space. And you know, on my retreats, yeah, you get a couple of uber hotties, and you get the vast majority of people like myself have all different kinds of body shapes and sizes, ages, you know, skin colors, everything. And
Yeah.
there's something about normalizing the body that takes place when you're like, oh, I actually get to see a human body in the flesh that is not on social media, that is not on porn, right? It's like, oh shit, it's not, it's just, it's like me. It's like me. It's perfectly not perfect. And so it just breaks those walls down. And, you know, I'm thinking back to the guy that came on that last retreat. Like, by the time he finished, it was like almost like he dropped this like heavy bag that he'd been carrying. And then the reason he's coming back is because he was like, it's unlocked something inside of me. And I want to keep going to see what's there, because that comes back to it's not an overnight thing, right? It does take time. And yeah, like for me personally, just to sum this up, like it changed my life, you know, like going from like chubby, literally chubby fat kid, like the heaviest I've ever been in my entire life was when I was 14. So like going from that, a lot of people who grew up that way, like it doesn't matter what you look like as an adult, you always kind of stay there in your mind.
You can, yeah.
And yeah, and for me, like dropping the clothes and being in that safe space to do that without all that expectation to perform and show up as perfect, it just helped me to soften my own preconceptions around how bodies and should be in my body. And I'm actually exhaling now because it's just a breath of fresh air. And to this day, I come back to that moment to remind me when I have those moments of like, oh my God, I need to hit the gym. I need to like, blah, blah, blah. You know, when I freak out about things like that, I just remind myself of those moments, because it grounds my feet onto the earth, man. It helps me to like come back and not be like just focusing skin deep.
I see. Yeah, and appreciate your sharing that, and you're being vulnerable with that, because I mean there are so many people out there that can probably relate to, like I said, that those feelings around their own body, and feeling like they have to compare themselves to everybody else and never being able to live up to that, because like I said, it can be skewed what you see. And also everyone has different like what they desire about themselves, or what's important in their life could be different. So you don't know what those other people are living through, but everyone has got something that they need to work through, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and we're all on the journey of trying to go down that path as well. What would you say to someone out there, a younger queer man who is on the journey of trying to, like I said, become vulnerable? They've been struggling. They're in the place of like literally like been holding themselves back from putting themselves out there because they're afraid of intimacy and vulnerability. Let's just say they're coming to hear from you for the first time, what would you share with that kind of a person right there?
It's interesting because what immediately came to me, I like second guessed and I was like, no, you can't say that, it's not like profound enough or something, but I'm just going to share it anyway because
it'll be what people need to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually that's what it is. It's like, trust yourself, and it's one thing to say that, but how do you actually do that? And for me, it comes back to that self-love stuff, the way that you show up sexually with yourself, and that all that stuff I was talking about before, breath, movement, sound, touch, like that really helps to build your inner confidence with yourself when you get to like have that connection to your own body, your own heartbeat, your own sex energy that actually builds you up. That can really help you to start to trust yourself. And the other piece that I want to say is that the way that our human mind works is that it's actually in the doing that we build the momentum to create shifts in our experience. It's not in the thinking about it, it's in the doing of it. And often we have to take really clunky, imperfect, awkward little steps in the right direction where we want to go. And that is what creates a little bit of momentum and more momentum to start moving forward. It's not about like having the 20-step plan of perfection to like move down. So, the first action that I would give if they came to me, let's say they're a 21-year-old person, they've never had sex before, they're terrified of having sex, they've only had online sexual experiences, and I don't know, maybe they're meeting people on Grindr, talking, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I would say the first thing I would ask them to do is look at your Grindr profile and be as honest on your Grindr profile as possible about who you are and what you desire in your relationship. Just be real, be vulnerable in that, be like, let yourself be seen there first, rather than just be like, I don't know, like sexy hung top or something like that. It's like, what does that even mean about you?
Yeah.
Like show your vulnerability there as a first step, and then keep it going.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome, Andreas. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that today. It's been a pleasure hearing from you. And I use the word pleasure, as the right word for this conversation. Where can people find you and connect with you if they want to get to know you and follow you, what you're talking about, or even, understand more about your future retreats?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok. They're my main two. I'm at Andreas.embodiment. So at Andreas Embodiment. That's my website, andreasembodiment.com. I am on X, formerly known as Twitter. It is not an alt account. It's just a normal account, at Andreas Embody if you're on Twitter.
Beautiful. And I'll link your website in the comments below if you want to get through. And I'm sure from there you'll be able to find everything that they need to know about Andreas and what he's got coming up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cristiano, for having me. Like, it's just been an incredible conversation, and I've really, really enjoyed like breaking down some yummy things around sex, intimacy, and pleasure.
It's been, like I said, a pleasure for me as well to have you on, and maybe in the future we'll have you back on to share some more of your gold wisdom that you have there. Thank you guys for listening in. If you've got any questions, comments, or shares, feel free to reach out to me. You know where you can find me on social media, and I'll be back here next week with another episode of the Queer Quest podcast. Until then, always remember that you've got this and I've got you. Bye for now.
Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey towards love and happiness? Introducing the 21-day Gay Man's Guide to Love and Happiness. This isn't just a course, it's a pathway to discovering your true self, overcoming challenges, and embracing happiness. Join hundreds of gay men who found joy and freedom. Learn from Cristiano Green, a coach with 20 years experience and a journey like yours. For a limited time, get this life-changing course at 75% off with a 100% risk-free guarantee. There's nothing to lose, but so much to gain. Your new life is just a click away. Enroll in the 21-day Gay Men's Guide to Love and Happiness today. Visit theglobalpridecollective.com and start your journey towards a happier, more fulfilled you.